Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Swamp Thing, as well as the latest episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time and start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you don't want to hear what I had to say about this week's episode of Swamp Thing, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Swamp Thing. A lot of interesting things went down. First and foremost, there's a whole situation with the hunters coming into the swamp trying to get Alec. And it's so interesting, once again, just like seeing what he's capable of doing and stuff like that. Obviously, it seems like nothing can slow him down because he does have a pretty good regeneration, because obviously even the bear trap wasn't enough. But I love, like, he hits the trees, he breaks them, but like at the same time, he's shooting out like little like wood daggers, essentially. It's almost like shooting out giant splinters at people. Lady got in like the legs, but the dude got it hardcore in the face. So now, like, you know, he's got a big target on his back now because Avery / Woodrow are going to want him now, obviously, for everything. And so, obviously, that gets back. And, you know, initially, Abby's like, no, I know, like, Alec has had to have his reasons for why he did that. And it's such an interesting thing because, obviously, for Alec, he feels like, you know, am I... Because she's like, no matter what happens, you're still Alec. But he's like, am I? The fact is, I'm tapping into this green, and it's making me feel like, you know, I feel like I am more in tune with this green than I have been with anything else in my life. There's that... It's such a deep connection that, you know, can't really compare to anything else. And so it's like... That's why he kind of feels like, am I even me anymore? Who was the man that was once Alec Holland? Like, is that even who I am anymore? Obviously, while that's also going down, you have Lucilia confronting Matt about everything. It's like, yo, he tries to deny it. I was like, okay, so is it gonna be a thing? Like, nah, the way everything went down, I was like, there's no way. Like, I knew Matt was gonna try to deny. I was like, is it gonna be a twist where it's like it's actually not him? It's like, nope, it straight up was him. And it's interesting. I was like, okay, so what is it? What is your reason for working for Avery? It's like, what's he got on you? Technically, he's got nothing on you specifically. It's more so your mom. It's so interesting. Basically, all the kind of shady stuff she's ever done, like in like the past 30 years, he's basically threatening to expose all that if Matt doesn't work. So it's so interesting because I guess he always knew there might come a time where he needs to put Lucilia in her place to kind of get what he wants. I guess he's never needed to pull that necessary trigger, a metaphorical trigger in this case, but Matt presented an opportunity of like, okay, like especially if I'm threatening him with stuff about his mom, he definitely won't say a damn thing because he knows that it'll ruin his mom. And it's so interesting because both of them did some very terrible things to protect each other. She set up the whole Remy situation last episode to protect Matt, and Matt killed Alec to protect her. So they both got a body on their conscience trying to protect each other. It's interesting because, like, I'm sure a lot of that shady stuff she done, probably not all of it, but some of that shady stuff has to be stuff she probably did, you know, or looked the other way on because of Avery, hence how he knows it. I mean, to be fair, he could have just deep dived, like always kept in the vest, but I think it's just because he always, you know, he had her do stuff and kept records just in case. You know, if he, once again, like the whole thing of like what he's doing with like the Woodrows is like, hey, if I go down, you know, James and Caroline are going down with him. So I think it's probably the same mentality, which it sucks even more because, you know, Lucilia thinks there was something there. It's like, obviously they were having their, you know, their love affair, but it's like, oh, now you realize, probably finally see what kind of a monster he is. So there's that. It's so interesting because Lucilia sends Matt out there to deal with the whole, well, they think it's a wild animal thing, but then it turns out to be Alec, and Abby's there explaining everything, and you can see the guilt Matt feels back. It's like, holy crap, this is what happened to Alec because of me. And it's just like, he said, well, he can't really find the words to say because you can tell he's just overridden with guilt. And then there's the whole situation of Alec being like, I recognize you. I was like, oh, is it about to go down like this? Because the moment Abby's like, I'm not going to give up on you and stuff like that, I was like, he's going to end up killing Matt and it's going to cause this rift between them. I thought that's what was going to happen, like, and he'd have to try and explain it to her later on. I thought that's what was going to happen, but no, he didn't recognize Matt. Because it was dark, he didn't get a good enough look anyway, but he remembers Matt because Matt was at the bridge. It's like, oh, you saved Abby, so okay, I know that you're a good guy and everything, which, you know, probably makes Matt feel a little bad too, because it's like, oh, you're looking at me like I'm a good guy because I helped Abby and everything, but in actuality, I'm the reason why you're in the state you are. I mean, it has to alleviate some of his guilt because it's like, hey, Alec's not dead, but he's in this condition because I put him in that situation. So obviously Matt is going along with everything, being like, okay, I won't say anything to anyone. He's actually telling Abby to like kind of come back with him. It's like understanding like this is why she's been spending so much time in the swamp, why she didn't return why she didn't leave when the CDC did. But now it kind of makes sense. And you have Matt being like, you can always just come back with me, trying to give her an out. But for her, it's like, I can't leave without Alec. And the moment he gets back, what does he do? He tells his mom. My mind immediately is like, they're going to sell Alec out, because it's like, okay, this is what Avery wants. Obviously, he's sending hunters out there anyway, potentially, if they connect those dots. But nevertheless, they're going to sell Alec out as a means of getting from underneath Avery. That's Alec is going to pay the price. I would assume that's going to be the whole situation. Maybe it's going to be Lucilia's idea to do it, or maybe it's going to be Matt's. But either way, because Matt's probably also going to think like, well, it's not Alec anymore. Even if that was Alec, he's a monster now. So I'm doing, in his mind, he's going to justify by being like, oh, I'm doing this for Abby. I'm getting her away from that monster. It's dangerous, yada, 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 and so forth. So that might be his thing. But I'm sure I just got the inkling like they're going to sell him out next episode. Well, whenever the time comes, just to get from underneath Avery. And speaking of Avery, Liz drops the news. Because Liz, obviously for her, she blames herself, because it's like, oh, I pushed him, and now it's like Daniel's in this condition, which Abby was shocked by, because she never knew the more duplicitous side of Avery and this kind of like the terrible stuff he's up to. And then you have her confronting him, which is kind of like, oh, there's some big accusations and stuff like that. But basically it keeps going. He's just basically like, go back to Elena. She's like, were you behind those thugs? He doesn't say anything, and it's like, she's like, I'm not a 17-year-old girl anymore. I'm not going to be scared of you. But then he puts it down to be like, yo, I will always care about you, Abby. But you come accusing me like that again, there won't be forgiveness. And it's just like, but the thing is, you couldn't even bring yourself to deny it, because he knows. I mean, that's the thing is, she still doesn't know that Avery was connected to Alec's death. So she hasn't really put that 2 and 2 together, because the only ones who really know that information is the police. They're the ones that can tell. Well, Remy was the only one that could tie it to being a Sunderland Bode, so that's information that only Lucilia knows at this point in time, and obviously Matt, because he was on it. So that's not public knowledge yet. Liz doesn't know that, at least I don't think she does. Yeah, she definitely doesn't, and Abby doesn't, because that would change the conversation even more. But when the time comes, she probably won't be surprised. It's like Alec got in his way, just like he was trying to get Delroy and Liz out of his way. Well, more so Liz by going through Delroy. But nevertheless, it's going to be interesting when that information finally drops. Obviously, we had the whole Daniel situation. We kind of get a flashback to understand how he ended up in, the current situation he's in. The whole situation with Murray not being able to leave. That stranger that visited Alec last episode. Was that last episode? That might have been that was the episode before last. Yes, that was the episode before last. That same dude. Or was that this episode? No, that was this that was last episode. I'm sorry, I'm confusing the hell out of myself. I really apologize. Sorry. But nevertheless, getting back to it, that same stranger came to Daniel 8 years ago. He's the one that set him on the path and made the whole deal with everything. It's like, hey, I help you out with this movie situation, which he did, and went from stuntman to basically being the lead in the movie. It's like, but you kind of have to do me a favor. Not really quite sure, but the person, she'll come to you one day with kind of all the information. The question was like, is that supposed to be Xanadu or is that supposed to be Abby? Because you can see it from both fronts. It seems like Abby might be the one in particular, because Abby will have answers to a certain extent, because she'll probably be able to bring the connection of like, hey, Daniel, this is Alex. See what's happened to Alec? Kind of a similar thing potentially has happened to you. I was wondering, because that random nurse that walked in, I was like, okay. I was like, oh my God. I was like, Avery's trying to finish him off. I was like, but why would Avery do that? I was like, it's not like he's necessarily a witness to anything, but I'm like, why would you? But I was like, I guess you're just going to straight up kill him. But it's like, no, he gets injected with like the saline, and like they didn't show you the nurse's face. It was kind of shadowed out and stuff like that. I was like, oh man. But then like he just wakes up. I was like, the saline was messed with to heal him. Turns out it was. Woodrow was testing it out on him, but it has adverse effects. Yeah, he got regenerated because he was supposed to be in a coma that he wasn't going to come out of, because there was minimum like low, brain activity. But he ended up waking up and he was recovering, but his skin was kind of burning. He was not necessarily burning, but he was just on fire, even to the touch, And obviously, it's a conversation that comes up between Avery and James. Caroline overheard everything, and that disgusts her because it's, once again, it's so interesting too, because it seems like his research isn't even about helping his wife necessarily. Because I was thinking like, okay, that's why you're doing this, because your wife's going through what she's going through. Maybe that's another thing to it, but he never brings that up. He's like, yeah, this could be cured for diseases and stuff like that. But it does seem like with that just conversation that went down, he's not even like, baby, I'm doing it for you, like what you're going through. No, it was more, it seems like it's more so about the recognition and fame of like, oh, I'll be such a grant, like they'll write history books about just my scientific discoveries and stuff like that's what it seems more like. But obviously for Caroline, it's like the fact is you tested an untested drug on a human being. The fact of the matter is, I just don't want to lose the man that I love along the way, you being so caught up in this whole situation. Especially I don't want you to kind of lose everything you've built on someone like Avery amongst anybody, Obviously, you have Daniel showing up there, and so interesting. Obviously, his eyes are kind of burning blue too, and it's so interesting because even like his character in the movie and stuff like was Blue Devil, and that's what, once again, I brought it up last episode. There's like this oranges kind of demon or goblin that's like a part of the DC universe. Like I said, if I'm remembering correctly, I feel like I remember it from the Justice League cartoon, but it wore like a cape and everything. I don't know if that's who Daniel is supposed to be, or I'm confused. I'm sure that's like a different character entirely. Once again, hopefully I'm not confusing it and that's actually a Marvel character. I'm pretty sure it's a DC character. Like I said, I could be mistaken. I'm curious to see what that's going to look like. Is it going to be a situation up? Because I'd assume, because it's had something to do with his costume and stuff like that. Because at one point the costume's eyes glow. So is that supposed to be like a precursor to what was going to happen to him? Because like he hadn't been injected at that point, but maybe it's like once he left and he was burning from the blue flame. Maybe the blue flame was the mask was reacting to that because it was kind of like, oh, your destiny's almost set in motion, Because it's interesting because he's burning blue just like when he tried to leave Murray, like he was burning, like it was like blue flames, like hellfire, Like I think I brought it up last time too, like hellfire typically is depicted as blue flames, but nevertheless. So that's an interesting development on its own. Obviously, like, Daniel's kind of losing himself, and you have Caroline kind of drugging him and knocking him out. And Avery's kind of like, okay, so, because, James is like, okay, how about we postpone any investor meetings and stuff like that till we kind of work out the kinks and stuff like that. Avery's like, nah, who cares? Fact of the matter is, I want your reports to say everything is going fine, because he's so desperate to kind of get this money, because obviously he's running low on money, because everything he's doing is based on Maria's money, which apparently Maria is not willing to take any treatment. I guess it's because, that conversation that happened at the end of the last episode, maybe for her, it's like she's starting to see Avery for who he is, that the fact that he's just using her for her money. Like I said, that seemed like that might have been something, the look she was giving him last episode, but we don't know if that's going to necessarily, whether or not that's the case or not, but that might be even more towards his desperation for all of this. Obviously, James got his own reasons for his desperation, but so does Avery, so that is definitely a very interesting situation. It seems like Xanadu was able to pull away some of Daniel's pain, so it doesn't seem like he's running as hot. It seems like he kind of returned to normal. I guess maybe it's like she sucked some of the pain away, so it kind of looks like he's just normal temper, so it doesn't seem like anything outlandish or crazy is going on with him. That's like, let this be our little secret, so once again, Xanadu's still filled with so many secrets, like what she knows, what she doesn't know, because even she doesn't fully understand what his destiny necessarily is. She just knows that she can't interfere, but she can help out a little bit here and there. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where that ultimately ends up taking us. And then there's the thing at the end, Abby and Alec in his lab, and it's like always finding themselves back there. But for her, it's like, you're still Alec, and for him, it's like, yeah, but is that true? Like, I feel like I'm supposed to get deep, the stranger came to him, like dig deeper into, green and kind of get more associated with it, kind of let it show you stuff. But he like, the more I dive into the green, the further I get away from being Alec Holland, and the further I get from you. But she's like, I'm still here no matter what happens. And he grows a plant in his hand and it sprays something in the air and it looks like, oh, Alec looks like Alec. So one of two things. One, it's kind of a bit of a hallucinogenic, and maybe this kind of ties into two, but I think it might be something, a spore or something that it's kind of like you see someone's true essence, because Abby always looks at Alec as Alec. She sees him for who he really is. Maybe it's kind of that thing of like, oh, seeing with unclouded eyes, like seeing on another level, seeing someone's true heart. So maybe him being like Alec is showing that, hey, no matter what happens, you are still Alec at heart. Even a stranger brought that up last episode. So that's what I'm thinking. I doubt it's like a permanent thing of like, oh, I'm fixed forever, or it's probably not something. It's something he can probably do to kind of alleviate some stuff, but maybe it has only a certain range. Like if you, like I said, you probably have to inhale the spores and stuff like that. It's probably like it's almost like a glamour of some sort. So that's where my mind is set on it. But we'll ultimately have to wait to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. I'm very excited to see what happens. And now moving on to this week's episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Quite a few interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break them down. Well, first and foremost, there's the whole thing working with Sarge. I love the whole, leaders kind of back and forth, like Mac and, Sarge making compromises about, like, how the operation should go. It's like, oh, take May and Daisy with you, and you get to take one of your people. It's like, no, I need all my people. You get to take one person with you. He chose Snowflake, so that was interesting. I also love that Mac made Deke go, too. Because Deke was like, nah, I'm not going to go on this mission. It might be a suicide mission. It's like, well, the fact is you are giving me like 2% of your company or whatever. He's like, the fact is whatever. But then Mac is like, okay, you know what? I'm going to find someone else. But you know what? I'm going to let Daisy know about that whole framework. He's like, whoa. You don't have to. He's like, no. Don't worry. I'll find someone else. He's like, no, you can. He's like, I'll give you 5% stay. And you have Mac being like 10%, and you stop using S.H.I.E.L.D. tech. And I love him being like, this is extortion. It's not cool, dude. I love that. Trying to take high ground at the end of all of this, but it was so good. Him kind of having to tack along and everything. It's so interesting because you would assume that he would kind of want to go anyway, just because Daisy's going. But I guess it's kind of like maybe he's passed out. I mean, he was kind of trying to show off to Daisy, but I guess maybe because it didn't work. Especially because the whole him and Snowflake thing happened. She's like, oh, you have such a beautiful soul. I can't wait. I'd love to see it kind of leak out of you or something like that. And he's like, thank you, because he took it as a compliment because he doesn't realize kind of like how a little scary Snowflake is. But I love that he took it as a compliment. Oh, thank you for saying my soul is so beautiful. And then later on, Daisy and May saw him and, Snowflake about to do their thing, and you're just like, oh, ew, gross. And he's like, it's not what you think it is. It's not like that at all. And it's like, you have a hickey on your nose. It's like, okay, it was a little bit like that. But she said my soul was like a butterfly that's just waiting to be cut open and set free. And he's like, I feel like that. I'm like, and May knows the context of what that means when she talks about butterflies and stuff like that. She means kill. Even Sarge is like, really? I like it better when you kill them. It's just that little moment like that is so good. I also love that Sarge was like yelling at Deke. It's like, oh, you messed up this thing that could help stop us being possessed by the Shrike, and he's choking Deke out, and then he turns around and he's like, okay, oh, morning, talking to Daisy and May, and he's like, breakfast? It's just the complete shift in tone. There's so much. I also love the fact is Daisy was just like, he's like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm a hacker. And then like Snow being like, oh, you hack body parts? And she's like, no, computers and stuff. And you see Snowflake like, oh, kind of so disappointed at like the glee in her eyes when she thought, oh my god, you hack body parts, that's so cool. So I just thought that was so interesting. But I also love the fact that Daisy hid her powers and everything, and later on he kind of confirms the powers, and he's like, oh, hacker, right? It's like, well, to be fair, she is a hacker, plus she's just got a little more kick to her, I just love it's also, if you notice too, maybe it's my imagination, it didn't look like, maybe she's covering them up, it didn't look like she was wearing her gauntlets, just like when you look at her hands, it didn't look like she was wearing them. I guess because, well, maybe, like I said, she might be wearing them underneath her coat or something like that. But it's just, because obviously, she needs her, like, she needs those to, like, make it so she doesn't break her arms every time she uses her powers, so. But also there's an interesting thing kind of breaking down this whole S.H.I.E.L.D. situation, because obviously she goes back a ways on Earth too, which begs the question, like, how do we, like, she must have visited Earth at some point in time, for the fact is that, like, basically there's Incan mythology about her, like, that's what Benson was looking into. Side note, it did not click in my mind until this episode when she was like, oh yeah, my artifacts that are missing are my artifacts. I was like, so because obviously I figured out the whole S.H.I.E.L.D. situation, that she was the monster that Sarge was referring to. I was like, I knew it had to be her, because it's like the fact that she's getting Fitz and Simmons and going to Earth, and all the monsters supposed to go on Earth. I was like, that's too coincidental. It's got to be that. Turns out it is that, but it didn't even click in my mind. It's like artifacts artifacts. It's not until that she was talking about the artifacts that was missing from her world. I was like, I'm such an idiot. Of course, the monoliths, it didn't even cross my mind. They're from her world, which now it almost seems like it's a different dimension, which that was the whole thing. Like, I didn't know what everything was. Like, once again, I'm still unclear whether it's like, are we talking other worlds in the sense of other dimensions? Are we talking other worlds in the sense of other planets? Obviously, part of it seems like planets, but there's a lot of other stuff that's like where Sarge and the others are from. Are they from a different planet? Are we talking like different universes? Like, that's what I'm trying to understand, because it almost seems like, because they say that like they were like some of the translations were basically saying that S.H.I.E.L.D is from a dimension of fear and darkness, which I wonder, could you remember? And because they make reference to it, because during the monolith things, it was opened up with all those different dimensions and everything last season. Remember, there was that dimension that kind of made I think like it was was that the 200th episode or something like that? Because it was like a special episode. I don't remember what episode it was. That was probably like no, it was episode 100 or something like that, back in season 5, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. It was the episode where it's like the dimension would create your fears and stuff like that. Is that where she's actually from or something? Then there's like, there's so many open questions about all that. And it's interesting too, because she wants to phrase, because obviously we get like dueling ideas. Like, she's trying to say that Sarge is a bad person, and Sarge is saying that she's a bad person. Because there's also the interesting thing, and I brought this up before, like how Daisy brings up the fact is that it's like, aren't you even at all concerned about the fact is why you look like Coulson? Because the fact is you don't just look identical. Your DNA it's similar down to like your molecules. And it's like, for her, it's like, there's got to be a reason for that. And he's like, no, it's probably random. She's like, it's too much of a coincidence for it to be random. Because it's interesting, because like there has to be a meaning to it, And the reason why I find that fascinating is because obviously with Inhumans, that's kind of like, I want to say it was Lincoln who explained that, and I always thought it was kind of a fascinating thing. That's why I always latched onto it. It might have been Lincoln, or it might even been Daisy's mom at the time. Either way, like basically that there's a balance. For every inhuman ability that exists, there's a counteract. There's another inhuman ability that exists to kind of counteract it. It's supposed to kind of, like, the inhuman abilities are supposed to represent kind of balance in nature. So I'm thinking that's what what she's kind of getting at, because it's like, it's too crazy for you two to look the same. Even the fact is, S.H.I.E.L.D is like, he wants me dead because I'm the only one that knows its true identity, which begs the question, like, obviously, is she lying? Is she basically taking what's true about herself but just applying it to Sarge? Or is there some truth to that she actually does know who he really is? Because for him, it's like he's trying to forget his past, because Daisy keeps bringing it up. But it seems like basically he's under the circumstances. The reason why he's trying to save these planets and kill her, killing her is more so like a revenge thing. It's like, if I save planets, it's a bonus, but more so than anything, it's just I want to kill her for taking away my family, So, and he doesn't want to talk about it because it's like, oh, they're gone and it's so painful, so... Which is also interesting, too, because, like, Daisy had brought it up earlier in the episode. It's like, oh, you're trying to save the world and everything. It's like, yeah, saving the world destruction, that's nothing new to us. We've literally crossed paths with that multiple times. I mean, we saw Earth's future, and we kind of rocked it and saved it. So we know about saving the world, so... It was so interesting. I wonder, was Sarge being truthful about that sword situation, about just stabbing her through the heart? Obviously, he's got the whole bomb situation. I'll get to that in a second. But it's like, was it like, what is that sword made from? I even loved them. Like, believe it or not, it's like a magical sword is kind of the solution to this. So it's like, is that true? I don't know. I also thought this was kind of nice reference where it was kind of like Mac was talking to Yo-Yo. It's like, oh, I'm going to need you by my side. It's like, yeah, because we never know what kind of form the beast is going to come. It always comes in unsuspecting ways, and then it gets revealed like S.H.I.E.L.D is the monster. But I wonder, is that supposed to be a reference to like, oh yeah, the World Destroyer last season ended up not being what they thought it was. It was kind of a misdirect in many different regards, because at first it seemed like it was Daisy, and then it was, what's her character's name? Was it Ruby? Dove Cameron, I believe. Yes. Her character's name, I'm blanking. I want to say it was Ruby. Yeah. So that whole situation. So it's like, yeah, we kind of got misled in the past. So like, kind of expect the unexpected type of situation, which like S.H.I.E.L.D doesn't look like essentially the planet devouring creature that she apparently is. I wonder, why does she look the way she does? Is that just like that basic question? Like, what, like, could she be like something ancient, like Hive or something? Like, Hive was supposed to be like, top dog amongst like the Inhumans. Like, what if S.H.I.E.L.D is kind of the same thing? Because the whole thing is like, well, why does she do what she does? It's like, well, she hates all things living. It's like, well, why do you do what you do, Sarge? For love. But now I do it for hate. too, so we kind of have that in common. So it was just kind of an interesting situation all around. Obviously, May is a little more trusting to Sarge than, Daisy is, because Daisy looked at it as like, is this some kind of twisted cosmic joke? We lost Coulson, and then we get some douchebag just showing up looking exactly like him and everything. It's just like, is that supposed to be just some twisted sense of humor from the cosmos? But then, you have May being like, I don't know why, but there's a part of me that thinks like I can trust him. And it's like, would you say that if he didn't have Coulson's face, is it just because he looks like Coulson that you kind of feel that? And I think even May kind of had to be like, maybe it is. I don't know. The monolith situation is obviously, Simmons kind of talks about it a little bit with Fitz. Oh my God, some of my Fitz and Simmons have been on fire since they got back together, dude. Oh, they're always so good, but this season has been extra good. That whole back and forth they had about him kind of getting upset. It's something I brought up last episode about, like, the fact is he's probably going to get jealous because it's like, that wasn't me. Not last episode, the episode before last, but it's like, that wasn't me you married. So it was almost like a different fit she married, so it almost makes him feel weird. And it's like, she's like, you're not really about to be jealous of yourself, are you? And he's like, yeah, because it's like, we had this whole lovely wedding. It's like, yeah, you were there. He's like, I guess I just had to be there and everything. And he's like, yes, I am a bit jealous and stuff like that. And it's like, how was like the honeymoon night or whatever? And then she's like, it was great, just smiling and everything. Fitz is looking at her, and she's like, but I bet you it's going to be great. It's going to be even better the second time, And he's like, so I wasn't good enough the first time? And she's looking like, Fitz, what the hell do you want me to say? It's just like, nothing I say is good enough. Let's just get back to work. It's so good. Because I love that, because I brought that up before. Like, I felt like that was going to be something, but he didn't. He waited till now to kind of complain about the whole thing of like, yeah, like you marrying that person. That wasn't me you technically married. It's like you married someone else, and then it's just kind of like, it's like that guy will always be your first husband, and I will just be kind of the replacement, which is kind of twisted when you think about it in the grand scheme of things. But at the same time, it's still the whole thing of, it is you, but technically it isn't, because it's him it's a version of him that went through completely different experiences, kind of making him, to a certain extent, DNA wise, yeah, they're the same person, but your experiences kind of shape who you are. So technically speaking, on a personal level, that is a different Fitz, a different person in general, so it's just an interesting thing to kind of, break down like that. So I just thought that was pretty neat. I also love the discovery that Pax apparently doesn't know the full plan, and Jocko says it later on. It's like, because you can't keep a secret. He's like, I can keep a secret. I didn't tell them that. So, like, the whole whatever is going inside, like the whole sword situation. Well, it seems like he was more so alluding to the bombs now in retrospect. Well, the bomb in particular in retrospect. But it was just so interesting to me that was a thing, I also love that Yo-Yo kind of took them down, and she even commented on like, she had to use her powers twice to take down Jocko, lock him back up, because they, once again, that's the beauty of it, because they are unfamiliar. They don't know how to expect, because like they don't, know about Yo-Yo and Daisy. It's actually interesting. Now I'm sitting here thinking about it. They are currently the only two Inhumans in the group. Because there's obviously other Inhumans associated. Well, we've lost some along the way, but there are other Inhumans connected to S.H.I.E.L.D. But like, obviously, like Daisy and Yo-Yo are like the main ones that you kind of interact with. They're kind of the only ones we kind of like, because it's interesting too, because like the Inhumans have kind of backed away from being the main storyline. Like I said, it played a bigger part last season because they were being traded off by the Kree, but obviously season 4 played a bigger part in it. So it seems like as the show goes on, they've kind of taken less and less of a main stage type of thing. It's just kind of like they're just kind of an added thing that never really gets talked too much about. Like, Inhumans. I don't even know if they've even said the word Inhuman once this entire season, have they? I don't know. That's just where my mind set that. I could be 100% wrong about that. I don't think so. I am skipping around a bit, but I love how like that whole thing works of like, okay, Sarge is on top of the vehicle, and he like falls forward into the portal, and then he falls up, and that's like falls up, and it's him, going through Jocko's jacket. I was like, I just loved aesthetically how that looked. That's so cool. That's some Inception shit, and I love it. I thought that's so dope. But along with all that, like obviously we kind of understand more now why Sarge was super coy about his plan, because he knew they would stand in his way. Basically, the bomb they're going to use to destroy what is essentially a Shrike power that's being made by a whole bunch of S.H.I.E.L.D coming together. And obviously when S.H.I.E.L.D gets there and gets closer, it'll get bigger and bigger, well, 10 times bigger apparently. And then that'll be kind of like, oh, things have started. The doomsday clock will essentially start and the end will begin. So it's that type of situation of like, that bomb will at least cover like 200 miles. There's a nearby city, hundreds of thousands of people will die, but it's like, hey, it'll leave a good crater in your planet, but hey, people with your planet will still be alive and she'll be dead. Once again, his main thing comes first. She dies. If we get by chance save the planet too, that's awesome. There's still a lot to this that, you know, obviously Sarge, the fact is he doesn't talk about his past makes it seem like, oh yeah, he's probably, because the way he was talking with May, it seemed like he didn't remember anything. So I am curious, because obviously the big question, once again, why do you look like Coulson? What the hell is that whole situation about? We need to know. Well, because the episode's called, isn't it like, Coulson course or something like that? It's supposed to be like, you know, I think the title of this episode is like a play on collision course or something like that, because there literally is multiple collisions, because it's like, okay, Mac is like, so how are you going to handle this situation? The vehicle, the truck is moving and it's got a bomb on it and it's going to cost a lot of people their lives. You could destroy the truck and potentially stop everything, but you'd kill Deke, May, and Daisy. But then it's like, if we don't do anything about the tower, S.H.I.E.L.D's gonna come. Yeah, we'll save 100 lives, but 100,000s of lives. But then like that whole situation, it's so much is happening. Fitz and Simmons are none the wiser about what's going on in the ship as S.H.I.E.L.D is massing her army. It's so interesting because like they had said that like, oh, we were like when they were on the Chronicon planet, they killed her allies, and it's like, so once again showing that there is some truth to everything that S.H.I.E.L.D said. So that begs the question, like, okay, so if that's the case, you know, you got to pick and choose, like, okay, so once again, what was stuff she was saying about Sarge that was actually about herself? There's more to it. Like, there's so much to this we still don't understand, because the biggest question is still walking away from all of this is, it can't just be simply about, oh, destroying. Like, why are the monoliths so important to her? Why does she need them? What about her world? Did she destroy her world? Is she the only being from her world? What kind of being is she? Is she on some, like, ego level stuff? I doubt it, but the fact that she devoured planets make me kind of think, like, are you kind of like a what is it, what are they called again? Celestials, right? Like those god tier people, like ego, like those type of things, like ego and nowhere. Well, the thing that was nowhere before it got hollowed out and turned into like a mining, trade place. You get what I'm trying to say. So I wonder if she kind of like that. Maybe she just has a human form. Maybe once everything's kind of put together, then, you know, with the Shrike and the tower and everything, then she unlocks her full power. She needs them to gather the energy from the planet, and maybe she feeds on that and it masses her power, and that's how she gets to devouring worlds, potentially. I don't know. There's, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see where that takes us. We also had that whole scene with Enoch at the end, which was interesting too. Like, obviously his plan about figuring this whole situation out about his people, what they're necessarily up to, I'm still not quite sure. Obviously the other Chronicons, apparently they're like, okay, we don't have to go after Fitz and Simmons because we have their brains here. I guess like while they were in that system, it copied their brains, because part of me was worried, it's like, but if you go in there, even though they're far away, would it still affect? But it's like, no, you most likely just copy their brains, so you can figure out the whole time travel thing, which could be an issue in itself, because if you go time traveling and stuff like that, you can undo a lot of stuff, cause more breaks in the cosmos and stuff like that. Once again, it's like, did that have an effect? Like, did like Fitz being a paradox, and technically Deke being one too, because he's from a future that most likely doesn't exist anymore. So that begs the question, like, are they causing damage to like everything? Because they made it seem like they were causing massive damage to like the cosmos and everything. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to kind of dive in and see where all this takes us. Like I said, everything's kind of turning up. Also, you kind of feel bad because Snow got left behind, so I wonder where her loyalty is going to lie with Sarge going forward. It's kind of like a necessary sacrifice, so what's that going to turn into? Like, is she going to be full on a good guy from now on? How would they handle the bomb? Because like Daisy can't really mess with it too much, because if she uses her power, she could end up setting it off. So it's going to be interesting to see what they end up doing. Dude, this is so crazy to think of like something so big and climactic is happening, because we're still a couple episodes away from like the end of the season. Like this is like episode what, 7 or 8. But nevertheless, we still got quite a few episodes left, a handful of episodes left, so it's going to be interesting to see where all this takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.